This is BBC America, the best of British television.
When he was young, I should say younger, my guest was a stand-up comedian on the British club circuit, playing to nightly audiences of drunks and thugs and desperately afraid of rejection. What's changed? Well, just about everything. He's now labelled as one of the country's most successful comics and comic writers, with a string of bestsellers and West End plays to his credit. But what about the fear? Does it still haunt him when he climbs up on stage? Ben Elton, a very warm welcome to the programme. You're laughing. Is that fear still there?
Nothing like the extent it was. I mean, if one, I think if you had the same kind of nerves that you have when you first start in this game, and I think I can speak, well, certainly for any stand-up comedian I've ever met, if they continued, you'd be dead, basically, because you can't eat on the day of a gig, and since your ambition is to work every night, then you'd starve to death, if nothing else. No, I think you have to relax a little over the years. I'm not complacent about audiences. I still, obviously, give 100%, and part of that is nerve-driven, but...
Is it that the nerves go away, or you just learn to control them?
Well, firstly, you learn that, you know, they can't actually kill you. I mean, even though the old expression is that one dies on stage, that you don't. You do live to fight another day. And secondly, the job gets easier. I think it's a bit Darwinian in that it winnows out those who can't cut it. I mean, I'm not going to kid you. It's not that easy to hold an audience's attention for 10 minutes or 2 hours, as I now have to, as I do a one-person show. And you get better at it. And also, the audiences get easier because if you're fortunate enough to have had some success, then they come to see you because they want to see you.
And success adds to your confidence as well, doesn't it?
Well, for the very reason that the audience, of course you're going to be more confident because you know that the audience is hoping that you'll do well. When you start off as an unknown on a bill of 10 in a pub late at night, obviously a lot of the audience are there in a gladiatorial sense to see people fail. You know, to see the Christian getting eaten.
It's the bear pit mentality, isn't it?
But obviously no one's going to pay, you know, £15 to sit in a 2,000-seat theatre. You know, they see you because they like you. So the job gets easier. But the fear, you know, obviously it's always a nerve-wracking thing to get up on stage and then try and engage the imaginations of thousands of people.
What about this controversy over the amount of money you've earned? Because you really fueled the flames, didn't you, by saying you wanted to set the record straight and you've never earned millions of pounds.
It was very...
You've done very well, haven't you?
Oh, enormously. The only thing I wanted to say was because I actually respect journalism and the trade very much, and I just think that at some point... Well, I just think at some point somebody's got to say, like, do standards matter? If you say somebody's got 4 times as much money as they've got, does that matter? And I tried to have this debate with Piers Morgan in a makeup room. He's the editor of the Mirror, and he said, well, write us a letter about it. Because I was saying, well, yes, I've been tremendously fortunate. I have a fantastic amount of money in any normal sense, but I haven't got as much as you say. And does that matter? Is it important? Do facts matter anymore? And he said, well, write to the letter.
But why not shrug it off? Because everybody in the public eye shrugs it off.
Tim, I've been in the media eye now for 17 years. I tried to have a conversation one day, and I seem to have ripped a word. I have shrugged off more crap and more lies and more extraordinary character assassination than most people have shrugged off, and I think I'm a pretty good shrugger. On this occasion, I took it on because the basic idea was that somehow I'd always preached some kind of communism, and I think that's an absolute outrage.
No, but you said you'd rather be dead than rich, didn't you, at some point in your career?
Never in my life have I said anything remotely.
Well, you never wanted to be a rich man?
Where did that quote come from?
That was in one of the cuttings, in one of the newspapers.
Never in my life have I said anything so stupid, because I've always been rich in that I was fortunate to be brought up in a comfortable home, not wealthy, but we had presents at Christmas and shoes on our feet, and I was brilliantly educated in the state system, so I consider myself wealthier than 99% of the world's population from the day I was born, and I recognise that as a great privilege. No, I've never said anything remotely.
So you've no qualms about money?
None whatsoever. I work very hard. If I was in it for the money, I would do adverts, I would do corporate gigs, I would be taking offers that I've had from America. I am paid for the work I do. Some of the money I give away, some of it I keep. I am entirely relaxed about that once I took it on, because I just said these figures are absurd. And the question I wanted to know was, do you have the same absolute irrelevant attitude of irrelevance to the facts when you're talking about people who matter? Forget comedians and novelists. When you're talking about Blair and William Hague, Are you as cavalier with the facts then? Because certainly I've never said, never be dead than rich. What a remarkably fatuous idea. Anyone who's, I mean, it's just...
I mean, there was a time when people in the public eye in Britain were ashamed of success. You're not in the slightly ashamed of your success.
Ashamed? I'm immensely
Yes, ashamed
proud
of
of
money,
it.
ashamed of success.
I don't think that I'm very proud of my work, the money I earn. I think, as I say, I give some away. I'm not going to tell you what I do with my money, but I can tell you I'm extremely relaxed in my conscience about it. No, I can't. Why would... I mean, here I am on a publicity trail. I've done 5 interviews today. Doesn't look like much shame to me, does it? The thing I'm proud of is that I earn my living doing exactly what I've always done, which is entertaining people and inviting them to turn it off should they wish, or not buy the books should they so wish. The problem I had with 80s money, and this is perhaps where this legend started, is that I think it is wicked and it is immoral to sell a public asset to your friends in the city and your friends in the media for a knockdown price in exchange for a lordship or whatever. I believe there was moral corruption.
Which still goes on, according to people.
It may do and it may not. I don't think it goes on anything like the scale it did under Thatcher because, frankly, everything got flogged. It was a fire sale. As Macmillan, a great Tory, once said, we're flogging the family silver. And they were flogging it at a very, very, very knockdown price.
Ben Elton, can we move back? I was going to say,
we
move
certainly
on.
can move on from
you
politics.
were born Benji Ehrenberg, weren't you?
No, I was born Benjamin Elton. My name is Elton. It's on my birth.
Your parents,
My father's birth
were
name.
Ehrenberg.
No, my mother. You see, everyone always forgets mothers, don't they? The deep entrenched sexism as a media is quite extraordinary. Whatever your father was or what you are. My father was born, as a matter of record, I've said in 100 interviews, my father was born in Frankfurt, and his family name was Ehrenberg. They came to Britain in 1939, obviously as a result, because it was a Jewish family, not religious, but Jewish by birth and race, which mattered, of course, in those days. They came to Britain to escape Hitler's persecution via Czechoslovakia, and were Ehrenbergs then. When my uncle joined the British Army in 1943, he was advised by the British Army to change his name because Jewish names were likely to attract attention should he be captured and be made a POW. So he changed his name to Elton and served for 3 years in the British Army, and his younger brother, my father, changed his name at that time in 1943 to Elton because he was a young teenage boy in England, in Britain, with a new life ahead of him, leaving his European past, which had caused great, great suffering.
Distinguished,
so he became
distinguished
Elton.
academic family, wasn't it?
They became so. They did tremendously well.
How much of it rubbed off on you?
I don't know. But anyway, just for what it's worth, my name's Ben Elton, and it always has been. And my mother's maiden name was Foster, if you were interested.
How did you do at school?
I did pretty well, in that I got through my 11 plus, which was in those days what was required. I believe personally in comprehensive education. I think the Americans have done very well with the fact that they put all groups in together. But in my day, you either went to a secondary school or a grammar school. I went to a grammar school. I've been state educated all my life. I had a university education. I took
And
a
interested
degree
in
drama.
dramatics very early on.
Very interested in drama. I loved it. I've always been involved. My father was an academic, my mother's an English teacher, so there was a lot of books in my house, and I was
And your first
tremendously...
play when you were a teenager?
I wrote plays when I was young. When I was 15, I wrote my first play, and I was able to put it on with school friends, and that was a very exciting thing.
Did
I've
you
written
know
all my
instantly
life.
that that was what you wanted to do?
Not instantly, not at birth, but I knew very...
No, I meant from the time you started writing.
Yeah, I was pretty sure by the age of 12 or 13 that I wanted to be in show business. I wanted to be an entertainer. And by the time I was 15, I knew I wanted to be a playwright. I didn't think at the time I was going to be a novelist and stand-up comedian and write television sitcoms and things. Playwright was what I wanted to be. And I still am. I have a play running in London at the moment.
You wanted to leave school early, didn't you?
I did. I was very fortunate my parents were able to persuade me against that because the privilege of an education is one I'm deeply grateful for because it introduces you to wonderful books and wonderful thoughts and good teachers. And as I say, the state system served me brilliantly and I will remain a lifelong supporter of it. That doesn't mean if you're educated privately there's something wrong with you, or that if you make that decision for your children, I would criticise you. This is the problem I come up against. So you really hate people who send their kids to private school? No, no, no. I just told you where I came from and how I feel about it. I am the least dogmatic person on earth, but I do get wound up because I get constantly placed in a pigeonhole that I don't feel I've justified by my work. I really don't.
You feel you get a bad rap?
Not anymore. I mean,
Be sensitive about it.
I'm sensitive about a lack of journalistic professionalism. For instance, when an article's written about me saying I said this, or I mean, I have no problem with, because obviously you're dealing with research notes, which are based on that which has been written about me. And where else could you go until you meet me to have the interview? What's difficult is when you do the interview and still it comes out differently. But I'm not overly sensitive about it, except that I should be more proud of the fact that the only thing they can get me on is sort of making up, oh, he changed his name, is he pretending he's not Jewish, or, you know, some weird... Britain is a strange place, obsessed with sort of class
bigotry?
issues, and a little, no, not full of bigotry, in fact, quite the opposite. I mean, actually, Britain is a wonderful nation in terms of bigotry. I mean, we have our bigotry, but my God, in terms of what happened in Europe only 50 years ago or whatever, Britain has been a haven for centuries. And I believe that despite there is racism in this country, compared to what one can encounter in many countries, Britain remains a deeply tolerant society. But there is a slightly kind of mealy-mouthed side to us, and I think that kind of the effort to basically knock people and find a reason to knock people, that's a little depressing, but it's no big deal.
You did drama at Manchester, didn't you? Manchester University. You lived in a caravan at the time.
I did indeed, yes.
Why?
Well,
on your own in a caravan?
It was where to live. It
was a gin palace.
No, I was 17 by then. I'd left school at 16 and gone to study at College of Further Education, which is a kind of tech. But they did a drama A-level. That's why I didn't leave. Education. I went and I was lucky enough to find a place that I could do drama and I did English history and drama, and I moved away from home with my parents' support, obviously.
And you met a girl who broke your heart.
Oh God, we're jumping about the place. I was subjected to unrequited love in that period, and you'll find it chronicled in my first novel, Stark. Yeah, that's a small thing. I often joke that, you know, even though I had the ultimate sort of teenage dream, I lived in a really nice little caravan on a field, you know, and I had great mates, and I had a little motorbike, and I never got me underway once, as we say in Britain, you know, and that was actually because I was, yeah, like all teenagers, I was trying to write sad poetry. I thought I was the only person who
were
ever
a sensitive
been fella. Possibly, yeah, I think I probably am quite sensitive, but I'm very happy, and I always have been very happy, and I think that's what's allowed me to kind of sort of put up with the kind of attention that you get if you happen to be in the public eye.
How hard was it making a name for yourself? I mean, we talked earlier about the clubs and the fear, but I mean, the actual daily grind of doing it. You hated stand-up comedy, didn't you?
I did. I found it very difficult. I mean, that was a sort of quite a brave move for me in a way. I became a stand-up comedian out of necessity. I needed to earn a living. I just left university. I was beginning to edge into television. We sort of had a half nibble about the young ones, but we were a year and a half away from being paid. And then it was only £300 each. There were three of us, and we got 900 quid between us. So I had a real problem. It was sign on, or try and get a job in Tesco's, or a shop, you know, or try and earn a living. And I desperately wanted to earn a living through writing comedy. The only vehicle I had for that was myself, was my mouth, was my body. So I invented myself as a stand-up comic. I became one. I'd never expected to. I never had any ambition to. All I wanted to do was amuse with my words. It was a very, very hard decision, and it was a very hard job. I mean, not as hard as, you know, mining coal or fighting wars, but as far as it goes, it wasn't much fun. I got better at it as the years go by. That's where we came in.
And the BBC give you a big break when you were 21 as a scriptwriter?
As a scriptwriter, yes, we were very lucky. The BBC
That's a big boost, isn't it, for a young fella?
The BBC is I'll be always grateful, and again, I believe that the, you know, public service broadcasting is essential because it can take risks. I mean, we were, you know, these clubs, these alternative clubs, there was only a couple of them, the Comic Strip, the Comedy Store, and Rick Mail was just a little bit hit, but the BBC were able to say, look, there's no money in it, you know, but we'll take a punt. You know, if you give us a script, maybe we'll make a pilot. So in January '81, myself, Rick Mail and Lisa Mayer wrote the pilot of The Young Ones, and a year later they made the pilot, and nearly a year after that we made the series. So it wasn't like it happened overnight.
Are you an easy writer? Is it a painful creative process? Are the waste bins all full of rejected papers and cans of baked beans all over the place?
It's not. I don't have the beans in the garret, although I still enjoy a baked bean on toast as much as any man. But it's not as painful as it is for some. I mean, of course, there's lots of what used to be paper in the waste paper basket. Now it's just blips on a screen. But I actually have quite a facility for it. I find that I write quickly. I write best when I write quickly. labouring over it doesn't improve it very much, because for me it's an improvisation. For me the whole trick is to get moving, to get the flow going. It's better when
So one idea sets off another.
Yeah, when I'm just letting it happen.
It's no good looking at the screen and just
Yeah, well, you have to do that. You have to look and think and look and think, and then click, it begins to happen. I work hard, I suffer a little, but compared to stories I've heard from how painful it is for some people to produce their art, whatever one uses the term, my art, I think I have a pretty easy ride, actually. I'm very fortunate.
So what's home life like? Your wife is a musician.
Yes,
plays
yes.
the sax.
Mainly the
see
bass.
her?
Yeah, I see a lot of her. I mean, I actually see much more of my wife than a lot of people do, because I work at home. Most of my working year is spent at home, working on my computer.
Want to have children? Want to be a dad?
Yes, we'd think we'd like to have children. No, nothing as yet, but you know, that's you know, as it goes. But we certainly, you know, I have a very happy home life. I'm fortunate in my friends. I have many friends, many of whom I've had for many years, and I lead a very relaxed existence outside my public life, for what it's worth. As indeed I find most people in the public eye do.
That's a surprising
yourself.
thing, isn't it? Because everybody thinks, well, you're on tour, you're on the whole time, just because they see you, what, for
yeah, I
half
mean,
an hour in a
if they
show.
thought about it, they would realise that's not the case. I mean, they don't take their work home. You know, the mechanic doesn't come home and start tinkering with the mechanism of the cooker when he's finished from underneath the car, you know. I mean, I know how to switch off completely. I don't think I could write anything like as much as I do if I couldn't. I never think about my work when I'm not doing it. I don't carry a notebook around with me. I don't obsess in the evening. I certainly don't feel the need to be terribly amusing when I go out to dinner with my friends, you know. But most people I know in show business are normal. I mean, there's this media myth that it's made up of kind of vast, warring egos who are hypocrites and deserve everything they get. But actually, you know, all my friends, which is in the comedy world, you know, seem to be perfectly well-adjusted, normal people. You know?
What about the future? What burning ambitions does Ben Elton have left?
To keep on keeping on, Tim. I mean, I fulfilled my ambition at the age of 21. I was paid for writing comedy, and that was what I've always dreamt of. I've discovered that I also love drama and thrillers. There always is a comic element, but I've discovered that it doesn't have to be completely funny. I used to write just comedy. Now I write stuff with a little more edge and a little more passion. This is a love story, my new book. But I'd like to carry on, reaching a wider audience. I mean, it's another thing I've been accused of. Have I sold out? I used to play to half-empty
Have you gone
pubs.
soft?
Now I play to 2,000-seat theatres. I always wanted to play to big theatres. Of course I did. Any entertainer does. There's not one on earth who, you know, why would I want to hide my gags under a bushel? You'd be insane. A gag unheard is a gag not worth telling.
Ben Elton, we hope you keep on telling them. Thanks
Thank you very
indeed
much,
for being
Steve.
on the show.
My
Thank you.
pleasure.